Welcome to the Vault. Did Bryan Kohberger move to Washington State to murder these victims or murder in general? Did he have knowledge of these victims before moving to Washington State? When did he apply to Washington State? I do believe that he moved to Washington State to either kill in general or these victims. Could it be that he had knowledge of their profiles before touching down on Washington soil? No response from the target is what we have found out. Is this what pushed him over the edge? The target did not respond to his messages, and he decided to stalk the victims and then kill them. Who was the intended target? Thank you for joining me. You're now listening to The Vault. Nancy Grace and company has commentary pertaining to the latest developments.
Emphasized at least 12 times before the murder, dating all the way back to June. Was that before he even started school in his PhD program? He was already staking them out. We know he had picked his victims by then, based on what cops are saying, but why them? What was the connection? As the desperate search for the murder weapon goes on, we are waiting, holding our breaths for the next bombshell to drop. I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. Thank you for being with us here at Fox Nation and Sirius XM 111. Who is this guy? Take a listen to our friends KXLY.
The last time the Arntz family saw him was when Kohberger was working as a security guard at a local school a couple years back.
When we talked to him there, everything seemed, normal. He was polite and everything. It was very weird to hear this stuff.
Washington State University confirms he was a PhD student at the time of the alleged murder, and Tom adds he was smart.
Very intelligent, and then, he would explain things in like a really odd way that had to be really sophisticated way of explaining stuff.
There is still so much more to explain and understand in this investigation. It's unsettling for Tom to think about how this person, who they knew for years, could have killed these 4 students.
Just insane.
Why is it that everyone talks about how normal the guy was way back when? They said that about BTK.
Celebrate the new year by...
Sorry about that intermission. Well, that's the point. You don't know people. So you can't say what is normal and abnormal, because we judge people according to things we think we would not do or things we don't do.
That Bundy charmed people, very charming. Scott Peterson seemed like the all-American guy, didn't he? We're hearing the same thing now, but can that possibly be true? With me, an all-star panel to make sense of what we know right now. But first, I want to go out to Fox senior correspondent Laura Engel. Laura, thank you for being with us. I was thinking about it before we took to the air. If he had started staking out the 4 students back in June, his classes at the PhD program, had they even started?
Yeah, he was in that area as far as when we look at the records of when he moved there, when the car was registered, how it was registered, it appears as though he was there. And the other thing about the...
Different news agencies and articles have purported him being there in August. Moving there in August. So I'd like verification of when BK moved to Washington State. Did he move in June or August? Because that is going to lay out more information if indeed he possibly could have stalked the victims from the state of Pennsylvania. So let's say that he did not get there until August, actually getting there, moving in an apartment in August, then that means he would have stalked the victims before moving there. If they can show data of him logging onto profiles, liking pictures, and scrolling their profiles. So this is where I have a problem. Different reports say August, some say June. So I'd like verification, because in the affidavit, I didn't see that it said June in their information. I saw that he changed a number. He got a new number in June, and the address said Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. That doesn't mean he stalked them in June. He just got a phone, and the address on the account was Pennsylvania. So this is where there's some discrepancy. I don't really know what is the said information. Did he deliberately move to Washington State to kill either the girls or kill in general? The fact that one of the girls was a target, that person has not been revealed. Did he become angry because he did not get a response? It is now coming out that he messaged one of the girls weeks before the murder. So did he become angry that he didn't get a response, as you're going to hear in this commentary, held a grudge, got the address of where the girls lived, and exacted the crime? Thank you for joining me.
That key piece that we heard on page 4 of the probable cause affidavit, not to jump ahead, but the idea that one of the surviving roommates heard somebody in the house say, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." I just want to remind us of a story that we heard very early on when Bryan Kohberger was first arrested and we didn't have a name. And when we heard that name, Bryan Kohberger, everybody pulled up this old newspaper article from Pennsylvania when he was a part-time security guard at a school district, and how he was a part of the super heroic saving of a woman who had an asthma attack. And he and another school guard, got down on the ground and helped her. And they said Bryan helped to save her life. And I just wanted to draw that connection of just, I don't know if he said those words, if that was a recording of some kind on her TikTok, but it was just, I thought, an interesting connection that he was a private security guard in an effort at all of the criminology that he took and the applying to be an intern with the Pullman Police Department, that there is a record of him being on the ground trying to help a woman, running to get an AED to save a woman's life. So I know that we had talked a little bit about that on previous shows. But it is certainly eerie.
Yeah, you know what, Laura Ingle, it really is, because you see the dichotomy of someone that could have been really a hero in this world and has done the exact opposite and turned into the devil. And of course, let me just...
I'd like to interject pertaining to who said, "I will help you, try to help you." I can't see a killer stabbing someone numerous times and saying to the victim, "I will help you." That would make no sense to even say that. I assumed that was Ethan talking to Xana. We will not know because we were not there. And the only person knows what was said in the room. 2 are dead and 1 has been arrested, which is Kohberger, as the suspect. And I doubt that he will ever tell the truth until, as I said, many years down the road, when this case has exhausted all measures. He's exhausted all measures going through the judicial process. He will then tell the truth or half-truths of what he has done in Moscow, Idaho. But I can't see the killer saying that to a victim. "I'm going to help you." Because how is a killer going to help a victim and he just stabbed him to death? That makes no sense. That's my opinion. The only way I can see him saying that is basically out of being a smartass to the people that he just stabbed to death. You're entitled to your opinion. Thank you for joining me.
Just say again before I pilloried online, everyone is presumed innocent until they're proven guilty. And that goes for Bryan Kohberger as well. You know, Dr. Bethany Marshall joining us, high-profile psychoanalyst, joining us out of Beverly Hills at drbethanymarshallmd.com. Dr. Bethany,
look, it's easy to say things.
Ooh, usually these crime stories don't have commercials, but this one does for some reason. Very strange.
Interesting what Lauren Engel told us, how he had gone so far as to save someone's life, being written up and lauded for it, and then somehow took a really dark turn. But my initial reaction was, it's a show. There's a whole drama going on. It's Kohberger's world, and we're all just living in it.
Nancy, think about one of the associated features of sociopathy, which is...
Which what you just said means nothing to me. I don't even know what you're talking about. The what? What of the what?
So sociopaths and serial killers are always sociopaths. And if Bryan Kohberger did this, we were going to guess that this is a first killing in what was intended to be a long life of serial killing. Okay, so let's hold that in our minds that he is possibly a serial killer and he got caught on his first.
Was this his first time killing? Was this his plan to become a serial killer? As I said, I do believe he moved to Washington State deliberately to exact these crimes. Because naturally he didn't just wake up a killer, but I believe over time, studying killers, their motivations, it became a part of him. And I do believe he was also studying psychology, criminology, because he knew he had deviant thoughts. So at what point did he decide he wanted to kill? 1 month before the murder, 5 months before the murder, a year before? But my gut instinct is telling me he moved out there for that reason. We have learned that a few serial killers have derived from the Pacific Northwest. So I believe that's why he ventured out there. It's my opinion that he deliberately moved out there to kill, not necessarily for this school and this program, but to be out of the way. No one could watch, see, hear, smell anything. But as you see, he got caught because Kohberger is a narcissist and a dodo bird, a dummy. He did not plan this crime out well. We live in a digital age. So it's very little you can do without being seen. Turning phones on and off. He was not thinking. And that goes to show you that he's a dummy. So he has book smarts, but under that, he's a dodo bird. He doesn't have what we call in the street common sense.
Offense. So what do we know about men like this? And yes, they're mostly men. They are grandiose. They are glib. They are charming. But it's a thin veneer. It's a superficial veneer of grandiosity, meaning that they want to be the center of attention. They want to be the star. They want everybody to look up to them. They want to feel like they are saving the world. But when I say it's a thin veneer, they'll only act this way until you disagree with them. And then the veneer cracks and they become vicious, they become mean, and they go on the attack. So think about the little boy he saved with the asthma attack. I can imagine the parents calling him, asking him over to dinner, him getting cards, maybe asked to go on a local TV show. I'm just kind of making this up. And that he revels in the glory of being so important. But what if one reporter or a parent says, yeah, but you know what? You cracked the boy's ribs when you were doing CPR, or I think you should have called 911 instead of trying to call save the boy yourself. Then he would have turned on them.
Well, I'm also wondering if that has anything to do with the way he picked his victims. Straight out to Chris McDonough joining me, director at the Cold Case Foundation, former homicide detective. Chris,
I do believe he holds a grudge. Because that has been said in cases of filing charges against a person who has harmed you, such as domestic situations, that when you're dealing with a diabolical mind, it won't matter what you do. You can file charges such as a restraining order, and it exacerbates the situation. You do nothing, the situation exacerbates. Because one, let's say you're not responding, you're ignoring the person. They now are becoming angry because you're not responding. Two, you decide to go call the police because they're stalking your house, calling you, showing up to your work, your home, and now they're mad because you called the police. See, that's the gist of the story when you're dealing with a diabolical mind, that nothing you do will be good enough. Because if you respond, but you're not giving them what they want in the conversation, it's a problem. You call the police, file a report, it's a problem. You don't respond, it's a problem. So it's not going to really matter what you do. And even if you decide to be nice to the person or try to talk to the person, conversate, go out on a date, but really you're not into it, they're going to know that, and then you're going to bow out eventually, so you're back to square one. They're going to be disgusted with you no matter what you do or don't do.
Who I found, by the way, on his YouTube channel, The Interview Room. Chris, I'm jumping off of what Dr. Bethany just said, and then I'm going to get back into what everybody wants to hear about. Joe Scott, C.C. Moore, Dale Carson, the nuts and bolts of how this case is going to be proven or how it can be dismantled by a savvy defense attorney. And yes, it can be done. Chris McDonough, jumping off what Dr. Bethany just said, I've been asked over and over and over, what's the motive? Number one, state doesn't have to prove motive. Okay? We're not clairvoyant. We don't know what's going on in his head. Number two, it does help a jury to have a motive, so the killings make sense to them. Now, motive. Bethany was describing a scenario where someone who was a hero could quickly make an about face. We know, Chris McDonough, that there have been occasions where Kohberger had been asked to refrain from creeping out women at bars. We know that he bragged to a classmate, I could go to pretty much any bar or restaurant and have any lady I want. He actually said that.
Why do dermatologists...
Intermission, thank you so much for joining me.
Okay, let that sink in for just a moment. Do you think there's a possibility, he was doing all this study with felons, violent felons, about how did you pick your victims, how did you approach your victims, and a lot more. That's even creepier. Do you think somehow he had been at a bar or a restaurant and one of these young girls had ignored him or didn't respond to his advances, and that is how he started following them? Because he would actually ask women at bars. I mean, Jack and Sid, how much would this creep you out? If a guy came up and said, what's your address? I would run for the hills if I'd seen a monster. I mean,
very
sure.
true.
No question about that. I mean, how about, hey, can I?
So when he was asking women that in Pennsylvania, was he trying to find a way to get into their homes? Because that is an odd question. But then again, it's not, because I've met many men here in East Tennessee that once you talk to them on the phone, they will ask, where do you live? So in some point, it's not strange. Here in the South, people are more talkative. They ask more personal questions than people possibly ask up north, East Coast. Here in the South, people gab more. So they tell more. But it's dangerous. When you first meet a person, you should not be telling them where you live. Because here you can say, well, I live on the west side, I live on the north side, and that won't be good enough for a nosy Parker. They will then say, where exactly on the north side? Where? I don't owe you that. I don't owe you an explanation where I live. If I say I live in the county or I live south, then accept that that's what the hell I said. But I've had these conversations with men before, and they will still not be satisfied with the answer. Because in it is rude to ask a complete stranger where they live. Rather, it's just she passed you, you said hey, she said hey, where you live. It's an ignorant question. And even if you were sitting there talking with one another, you don't have any business asking someone where they live or where they work. You don't tell strangers where you work, where you live. I would say it to a female. You shouldn't tell a female where you live if you're a woman, because you don't know them. And as I said, here in the South, we gab more. We tell too much stuff. Trust me, the Queen could share some stories with you that would blow your mind. The things that people tell complete strangers about themselves. Criminal background. They currently use drugs, narcotics. Their run-ins with the law. They don't have their kids. The state intervene. Just out of the blue, just tell a complete stranger their whole damn life story. As one guy says, I'm an open book. I don't have anything to hide from people. I said, well, you should. Because why do you want to tell a complete stranger your life history and you've been in trouble and you did this and you did that? Such as somebody coming in your house working, telling you they've been to prison. Why the fuck would I want you in my house knowing you've been to penitentiary? So now I have to ask myself why you went to prison. Because it's only going to be, what? A short list? Sexual assault, robbery, burglary, theft, drug trafficking, drug usage. You see where I'm going? And then now that makes me look at the people who hired you. Why did they hire you, one? And why do they have you going in people's houses doing maintenance work? Stay woke. This is why I always tell you have to pay attention to the information. Let's continue. Thank you for joining me.
I buy you a Diet Coke. I don't know, something like that. Every time I throw a line to one of the twins to use on their love objects, they tell me how horrible they are. I don't know what a good pickup line would be. I suggested to one of the twins to say, how was your New Year? And they doubled over laughing. They could never say, how was your New Year to somebody. So I'm not good at that. So Chris McDonough, what about it?
Nancy, the fact that it's not an obvious motive that's, right on the surface here, and the fact that we talked about this on your show earlier where, he treated this killing as almost as if it was an event in his life.
One of his creepy experiments?
Yes.
Oh, Chris, wait. You just gave me a thought. Hold on.
Yep.
You know how he would ask all the violent felons, murderers, rapists, child rapists? What was going through your mind? How did you feel during the murder or during the rape? I wonder if he was doing this to see how it really did feel. What it was really like. I mean, this whole thing was over it. I'm sure Joe Scott and Dale Carson are going to have something to say about this. Over in 16 minutes, based on the timing when he pulled up and when he left. It was almost clinical, in and out. There was no rape. There was no theft. He just went in, did the killing, and left. Chris McDonough. How's that?
Yep.
16 minutes or less. That is the timeline of this crime. 404. He's in the street circling around doing something. Also, he was there, I believe, an hour beforehand. How long did it take him to actually kill each victim? 4 victims. That's 4 minutes. Per person. What is the truth? How did it come to be? He made it to this house. These kids. As I said, you have to wonder if he was around when the police came to the address. August, September. For noise violations to the house. Was he around then? We hear that he was the shovel going into class. So one would wonder, what was he doing this entire time that he was living in Pullman, Washington? Was he stalking other people besides 1122 King Road, the occupants at this address? Are there more victims? Or this was his first rodeo? Did he study criminology psychology because he knew something was wrong with him? He was trying to get an understanding of himself. And then he decided, well, there is something wrong with me. And I'm just going to continue studying these other individuals because one day I'm going to go out here and find me a victim or more. And I'm going to do what these people have done to others. What is the truth?
Yeah. And he presented himself in such a cool-headed, chameleon type of way, evident of the fact that we have, this information allegedly that he says, I'm here to help you. So this guy, allegedly, if he is the suspect, which, he's been arrested, he is that guy that if somebody, and the doc can keep me honest here, if somebody pushes him away, he's going to hold a grudge for quite some time. So in my mind, my question has been, how long has he been holding this grudge? And that those women, were they the receivers of that anger?
Good.
We need to know exactly when he touched down Washington soil and when he exactly started stalking the victims. Did he also stalk the victims who were alive? Because he had to have known of all the women that lived in the house because they all posted pictures of one another. But yet 2 survived. So all that's pertinent to what happened on November 13th. Once again, you hear mentioning of holding a grudge. Was he upset because one of the women did not respond to him, possibly blocked him? But you have to use common sense. A lot of people do not friend people they don't know or have odd profile pictures, memes. If he didn't use his own picture on a profile, then why did he think somebody would accept his friendship through IG or Facebook or whichsoever? Because you get to go into the app and see the profile, if it's private or not. Facebook, all of that, you get to see when they join, blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of like YouTube. If a person sees something suspect with the profile, they're not going to accept it, the profile. And especially when it's private. Why would I want to accept a private profile as a friend, follower, whichsoever? This is why it's dangerous to have an open profile that's public. Kaylee Gonsalves had Moscow, Idaho under her legal name. So you can't have your legal name and the location of where you live because one, you live in a town of 26,000. You're wearing apparel that has University of Idaho on it, as one chat member had mentioned to me a few weeks back. So how long did you think it would take for him to find out who you are and where you live? So now we have your government name, your location. Now all I have to do is Google your name or pay one of those sites to get the phone number and location of where you actually stay. Then I Google and do the same for the other women. Now I realize you all stay in the same house. Bingo card. Now all I have to do is sit outside and watch. Too easy. That's why you don't use your government name on profiles. You don't put your location. Now, sometimes people will put their location just to show that, hey, I was at this restaurant, this bar, this movie theater. I checked in at this place, such as what they do on Facebook. But everything else on the profile is not informational, such as where they live, where they went to school, their occupation, where they work. I would advise anybody on social media to take that stuff off. Nobody needs to know where you live. Nobody needs to know where you work. I don't recommend it. Because this case is prime example of why you do not need to have those things posted to your profile. Because even if you go live on a live stream, IG, Facebook, you are still announcing to people where you are. Even if you're using an alias on a profile, a nickname, whatever, they still know where you are. So a psychopath could be one of your friends. You don't know that they're wacko, and then they show up where you are in the business, sit outside and wait for you to leave. This is why you have to be aware of what you post to social media. Don't ever assume you cannot be a target and or a victim. There's no such thing.
Good thought. And I want to follow up with Laura Ingle. Laura Ingle, senior correspondent, Fox News. Laura, you were so incredible on Fox News last night. Every time you start talking, it completely changes the course of my questioning. I hope you know that, which is a good thing, because it's always something new that you're going to say. I want to follow up on what Chris said. And guys, remember, how many times do I have to tell you this? Dale Carson and Joe Scott Morgan and C.C. Moore, brilliant genealogists, by the way. We're not having tea at Highgrove with King Charles and Camilla, okay? Jump in.
Well, there's no question he had a relationship with those.
Wait, don't jump in quite yet. Wait. Laura, you're going to like this, Dale.
Yeah.
You're going to like this. Okay, if he had met them, all right, at some point, getting a coffee and say, hey, you live around here? And she goes, well, I'm not going to say it because that's a curse word. I gave up cursing. Get lost. I'll put it in a nice way.
Did he pass their paths out in public, or social media suggestions came up and he became fascinated, obsessed, lusting in behind these women, girls? Which is it? That's the sick part of all the social media, the suggestions. You on Facebook, IG, you get suggestions of people to follow. Very dangerous, because you're assuming you know the people. No of them, or they know you. It's all the same. You don't know people.
There? Did they live there over the summer?
That's a great question. I think that we assume that some of them did, but I don't know if we have those records that show that. But you're right, the cell phone tower information about how many times he had been back.
Yeah.
But I also want to pass.
There's information that says the girls got there, some of the girls at least, became residents of the house in June. So who was the first to get into the apartment house, and then how did it follow? Because what's puzzling still to me is that Kohberger would have had information of all the girls living in the house, but yet 2 are alive. So explain why he would leave someone alive, but then go through all this trouble of trying to disguise his DNA in Pennsylvania, clean his car in Pennsylvania, but yet he would leave one of the roommates alive who allegedly saw him. So then you have to ask the ultimate question. Did he walk past this person and did not see her, DM, standing in the doorway on the second floor, bedroom off of the kitchen? It's very baffling information.
I also want to fast forward really quick because I thought about this last night.
Uh-oh, here she goes. Train out of control.
You know how we've been watching how, there's a direct line of path from his apartment in Pullman to the apartment to the rental home in Moscow, Idaho. And then he takes this crazy path home where it goes down and around, and he's obviously trying to, take a different route. But we've all, I think, been on the same panel talking about Fotis Dulos. It was a case that we covered where a estranged husband murdered his wife of 5 children and had a mother of 5 children. And all along the way, he was dumping items. So where are the bloody clothes, the shoes, the mask, obviously the knife, anything that the duffel bag that he might have brought to change into clothes, anything of that sort? I'm curious now in the forward part of the investigation of, were there any cameras that picked him up going somewhere? Where did he dump those things? I know that we've been talking about how he dumped some garbage once he got to Pennsylvania, but did he do anything in that long roundabout way from the victim's residence back to Pullman? Because he took that, if you look at the map that's in the affidavit.
That is why I would argue Laura Ingalls is a better reporter on her sick bed than, guys, just so you know, she's had COVID. And you know more facts. And I don't mean institutional facts about this case that we've learned from the beginning. I mean like what's happening right now. That's an incredible thought. Okay. This means something, Dale Carson, because I'm getting chills.
But tonight is not all that important.
Can I just introduce you? Dale Carson, trial lawyer out of Jacksonville. I'm going to get it in. And this is a good part. Former FBI and former cop in Miami. Date at DaleCarsonLaw.com. Okay, go Dale.
You got an eyewitness of him being in the property. You have his DNA. You have a number of slaughtered victims. Having a knife isn't like trying to find a gun where you can connect the bullet through case markings to the actual firearm that you find in the defendant's possession. This is a knife. It can't be exactly, and Joe can correct me on this, it can't be exactly determined that that was the knife unless there's DNA on it later.
You're absolutely right. And I'll tell you why. Dale Carson, and I've had it out with so many forensic dentists on this exact point. Let's do what you just said. Joseph Scott Morgan joining me, professor of forensics, Jacksonville State University, host of a new hit.
Before she goes into that, all the traveling he did once leaving 1122 King Road, was he dumping clothes, the weapon? Because we now know the shoes were left behind that mimicked the pattern that sat at the door of DM, second floor. Diamond-shaped pattern on the bottom of an alleged van shoe. They found shoes at his apartment that coincide with the print at DM's door. So as I had said before in my live stream, I won't doubt that he did not throw away the shoes, and I do believe he did not. So let's go into the Dickies tag receipt from Walmart. Were those pants he bought? What color were they? Where are they? Discarded. The other items purchased in Marshall's, where are they? Sweatshirt, t-shirt, dark perhaps, hoodie, where are they? Did he take this long traveled road trip to Idaho, Washington to discard the items on the morning of November 13th? But he kept the shoes, washed the shoes, spot cleaned the shoes. I believe he did. Thank you for joining me.
Series body bags with Joe Scott Morgan on iHeart. Joe Scott, same theory applies to forensic dentistry as it does with this knife. Flesh is flexible, and you can't really, it's like trying to get a teeth mark in Jell-O. Ain't gonna happen. I mean, unless you've got some really crazy set of teeth, then occasionally I've seen it be very convincing.
Yeah, but still, you can't. One of the problems with, we're not going to go down this path too far.
Says you. I'll drive this train wherever I want to, young man. But go ahead.
I'm getting out of the car.
Somebody's getting sassy, Jackie.
You can't quantify bite marks. That's one of the problems in forensics.
Now, why do you say it like that when I said it was like biting into Jell-O? But go ahead, Professor.
Well, thank you. You can't quantify it, and the same applies to a knife wound. You can examine it, you can compare it, and you can say it's close to. Here's one thing that I find very interesting, and something that we do in the morgue that people might not be aware of. Even with knife wounds, prior to the things that we'll do are full body x-rays. And this is kind of key here because this knife was used allegedly multiple times, right? So every time you're striking with this knife, there is a potential that the structural integrity of the knife is being compromised, it's wearing down. And depending upon how well the blade is made, it can chip. And one of the things we look for in these x-rays that we do are little metal fragments. Now, you can't do it ballistically, but what you can do, and this is really cool, is that if you can recover one of those chips, you can do a metallurgical analysis on that chip. And what that means is the chemistry behind the creation of that blade is unique to that particular manufacturer.
Okay, wait. Let me just understand what you're saying. Are you saying a knife, use of a knife in a murder can use tiny microscopic pieces of metal in the wound?
Yes, it can.
Have you ever seen that happen?
Yes, I have.
How often have you seen that happen?
Infrequently.
You mean rarely? Okay, because Joe Scott, I hear what you're saying, and I do think it can happen. And as you were saying, the worse the quality of the knife, the more likely it will happen. I've never had a case where a knife left any type of metallurgy behind in a wound, but I do see how theoretically it can happen.
Yeah, tips of knives break off very frequently.
A tip breaks off, yeah, but
So that's what I've questioned myself. Did the knife break off in any of the victims? Because as you're hearing here, if he used the same knife for all 4 victims, you are hitting bone and cartilage inside of a human body. Did pieces or partial or all of a knife break off in one of the victims? Possibly the last victim. I don't know. It was not left behind, from our understanding. Didn't find it at his apartment during the search. Very interesting information. I never heard of this. Pieces of knife being left behind. Then you have to also ask, did they do a x-ray of the victim's insides pertaining to anything left behind of a knife? Very graphic. It's very graphic information.
I don't know that it's left in the wound.
Sure it is. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it is. It's left in bone.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, it happens. It happens with great frequency.
So back to what Laura Engel brought up. Where in the hay is the murder weapon?
Where is the murder weapon? Idaho, Washington? Hid it or buried it?
For a deep dive into Britney Spears' conservatorship. Trapped, streaming now on Fox Nation. Crime Stories with Nancy Grace.
Nancy Grace.
I'm going to circle back to the murder weapon. I've just got to go to Chief Genetic Genealogist, Parabon Nanolabs, CC Moore. Again, you know what? Dummy down for me. I'm just a JD. I'm not a genetic genealogist. And you're bringing back memories, happy memories for me, sad memories for medical examiners and crime lab personnel, to go through every single line of their report and make them speak.
Brief intermission. Sorry about that.
Understand, as a Shakespearean English major, CC, they need more DNA. Now, do I think the case is strong? Yes, I do. I think the case is incredibly strong. But that said, I can just see a Johnny Cochran move. God rest his soul. He was my co-anchor at Court TV, Cochran and Grace. I can see somebody like him coming in and going, what? Out of a bloodbath like this? And you're telling me the only DNA linking back to the defendant is a little epithelial skin cells on the snap, on the knife hilt? Really? And you're going to send my guy to the death penalty over that. Oh, HELLNO. That is what is going to happen. I'm telling you right now, unless somehow they can find some other DNA.
Yeah, I agree with you, Nancy. They could argue that someone else transported that knife sheath to the crime scene.
Or they could argue this, Cece. Oh, Lord, I don't want to give them any ideas. What if they argued, yeah, he went to a knife and gun show, and he looked at a lot of knives, and he opened them up and looked at them and snapped them back and put them back on the display. Then, of course, they'd have to dig up a knife and gun show that was in that area. But that said, there's a million ways they could counter that one little bit of DNA.
For sure. So I think we know, based on the eyewitness DM, that he was not totally covered up. She was able to see his eyebrows, and we are told that he was wearing a mask that covered his mouth and his nose.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that sounds like the kind of masks we've been wearing with COVID for the last 3 years. And it also might explain, by the way, why she wasn't thinking this was somebody who had done something terrible in the house. You know, those kids are used to seeing people wear masks. It's been...
Well, let's be truthful. Most young people don't wear a mask. I can honestly say the young people I see here in the general area, I haven't seen one that I can even just recollect wore a mask or gloves recently. Most people have not been wearing masks nor gloves. So I doubt that the people they hung around wore masks and gloves, because if they felt like that, 9 times out of 10, they wouldn't even be hanging in their house, partying with them. They just wouldn't, just for the fear of getting COVID. And as you see from body cam footage from August and September of last year, no one was standing outside of their house, their doorway, with a mask or gloves on, and any of the houses around where they went same day, issuing warnings about noise. No one had a mask on and no one had on gloves. Just saying.
Really normalized over the last 3 years, and these are young kids. So anyway, was his hair covered? He's got a full head of hair. Did that guy walk in there not fully suited up? If so, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised.
As far as his hair has grown out, ma'am, since a month. He was free a month. I believe his hair was shorter when he killed the kids. And we know that men hair grow a little faster. So 9 times out of 10, his hair could have been shorter when he committed the crime at 1122 King Road. And what we're seeing now, since the arrest, is hair that's grown out. Stay woke.
If there is some hair evidence left at that scene.
You know what, Cece Moore, I'm going to charge you for all the paper that I use. If you would laugh if you could see all the notes I take furiously whenever you start talking. I'm running out. I'm using the back pages of things the twins did in school in the 5th grade, for Pete's sake. That is so smart. Okay, we don't know anything about his head being covered, do we, Laura Engel?
I have not heard anything about the head being covered. And one of the questions I had for the family, the attorney of the Gonzalez family, who I spoke to Sunday, I asked, you know, have you talked to DM? Have you talked to Dylan? They said that they have spoken to her, but they wouldn't tell me what that conversation was for obvious reasons, for personal reasons. But, you know, we don't know what more.
Can you make your hair stronger?
So what was the conversation? Because we've asked that here on this network. When was the last time they spoke to DM? Do they consistently talk to one another? Does she call them? Do they call her? What did they ask her? What did she say? Were they satisfied with the information that she gave? Because I would have been drilling her. Was everybody getting along? Who said what? Who did what? Why not? They all live together. You have every right to ask.
About what she thought. You know, when I first heard of the story, didn't we all sort of think that whoever did this must have been dressed like a ninja and maybe even wearing goggles for the sake of not leaving your DNA? But to your point, there just has to be more. The bed sheets, the comforter, the staircase, the door handle.
I'm thinking about hair, and I've got to ask Jackie, why are you holding up a sign that says ski mask?
Didn't she say he had a ski mask?
Nobody ever said he wore a ski mask. Did anybody ever? He had a mask covering his nose and mouth. I haven't heard anything about ski mask. That's how facts get totally distorted. Has anybody said ski mask besides Jackie sitting right there?
Well, I thought that at first too. I forgot.
You've had way too many Dunkin' Donut cups of coffee, Jackie.
Dale?
What, Dale? Ski mask?
And I will tell you, it's in the car, as Joe Morgan will tell you.
Exactly.
That's where the evidence is.
Yes,
and
it
as
is.
soon as they find
Yes.
one of the victims' blood in that car.
That's what they need. That is what they need. Yes. Hey, CC Moore, I got off track with Jackie's ski mask allegation. What were you saying?
Can I go back to the hair?
Yes.
So the hair, you know, you used to not be able to get DNA from rootless hair, but now we can, thanks to the brilliant Dr. Ed Green from Santa Cruz. And I've helped on 2 cases recently where all we had was a tiny piece of rootless hair.
You mean mitochondrial DNA? Won't that work?
Mitochondrial, yes, but you can actually now get autosomal DNA.
Whoa, wait. What did you just call it? What did you call it?
Autosomal DNA. That's the type of DNA.
Autosomal?
Yes.
I'm going to throw that at Joe Scott and see if I can stuff him. Autosomal. He's probably Googling it right now. Go ahead.
It's the type of DNA you get from both sides of your family, from all of your grandparents, great-grandparents. It's much more unique than mitochondrial DNA.
Okay. And you're telling me I could get autosomal DNA from a hair without a nucleus. And it's more exact than just mitochondrial DNA, which you can get from a hair without a nucleus that only goes to your mother, correct?
Right. Mitochondrial DNA, there can be thousands of people, tens of thousands of people who have the exact same signature, but no one's going to have your exact same autosomal DNA signature except for a twin.
That's why I call her brilliant. Hey, Joe Scott, are you through Googling autosomal yet?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Wow.
Guys, I'm just pulling Joe Scott's leg. He's just an incredible forensics professor at Jacksonville State. Joe Scott, can we just, and everybody jump in, okay? You know, you sure did pipe down Chris McDonough.
You know, I've got some ideas. Nancy. I'm waiting.
All right, Joe Scott, if he could just drop one hair. One hair. Did you hear what CC Moore said? If we could just find one hair and all that mess of a crime scene, one hair, or as Dale Carson pointed out, one speck of blood in that Elantra. Joe Scott, how are we going to do this?
Look to the hands. Look to the hands, Nancy, because this is key. We've made a big deal over the last 2 weeks about the examination of these victims' hands at the morgue. Remember, they bagged the hands, which is something that we normally do, all right? But when this occurs, and you have individuals that are fighting back, remember, we've got documented defense wounds. They might be grabbing at the head, and if they do, and plus if there is blood on the victim's hands, and everybody knows how tacky blood is, it's sticky. It's amazing. It's amazing what you will find contained, not just beneath the fingernails, and those are, you know, you can really harvest a lot out of those, but also just stuck to the palms of the hands and the backs of the hands. They very well, one of these kids very well may have pulled out a root, a hair with a root intact as well. You know, to Cece's point about the autosomal DNA, yeah, I mean, and some of this hair might be fractured, you never know, but that's why they have gone over these bodies with a fine-tooth comb, Nancy, and they have recovered every bit of trace evidence. I'm hoping they have at the morgue, and they applied a team to this that did nothing but this. The clothes of the kids were taken care of very well. They were sent to the crime lab. Everything was documented, and I can't, you know, we could spend 2 shows just talking about the examination that they're going to do on these clothing alone for trace evidence and extracting anything they can that might be DNA rich.
Okay, I want to hear what...
So what did he take from the crime scene to his car and his house? I read you documents pertaining to the seizure of his apartment yesterday in a live stream. Blood, pillows, linen, black nitrite glove. Did the victims get any of his skin under their nails, hair? Did he leave hair behind? You shed hair every day. Naturally, his car probably has a lot of evidence because that's where he went first before going to his home. So that means he got into his car carrying what he took from the crime scene. You also hear of dog hair possibly in his apartment. She had a dog, Kaylee. Will that dog hair match? Will the hair found in his apartment be blonde, matching the victims? Dark hair, Xana Carnot, Ethan Chapin. See, he did not plan this crime thoroughly because he didn't think of any of those things. It has been said by the coroner that a few fought back. Who fought back? Did they scratch the victim? Pull out hair, eyebrows, face, neck? See, you don't know. If they were able to grab his face while fighting him back. The fool kept his shoes, just a dumbass. Kept his damn shoes, which I already said. I won't doubt that the perpetrator kept their shoes. Where are the clothes? Discarded on the way, town for town, place for place. Weapon, discarded, hidden. Won't need it now because you're not getting out of that jail, Kohberger. Unless you pull a Bundy move, you're not walking out of there. As we say in the street, possibly carried by 6, but it won't be that you walked out. Most definitely. What is the evidence left behind in the car and his apartment of the victims? And what did he leave at the crime scene pertaining to his own skin cells, sweat, hair?
Chris McDonough's idea is.
So Nancy, on the sheath, I want to go back to the sheath for a moment if we can. Okay, it's laying next to
Maddie,
one of the victims. Yep, by her leg. You notice there's no conversation in the affidavit. I've had many judges ask me, is there anything else belonging to anybody else on this item, i.e. cross, blood, et cetera, et cetera? No, Your Honor, it looks like it's a single source DNA. So here's my thought. That scene was a horror house. Why is there not blood on this sheet? And I would submit to you, if it was, that would have been put into the affidavit, and that's why.
Okay, hold on, Chris McDonough.
Very good point.
That again very slowly.
Sure.
Very good point.
The sheet, we know there's single source DNA on the snap.
The bar is hard to measure when you're constantly racing.
Sorry about that. Exactly. That would have been mentioned in the affidavit because that would be evidential material. So why wasn't there any blood if we believe he went to the girls' room first? Let's say he took the knife out the sheath, sat it on the bed, or he had the sheath attached to his belt and it came off some type of way. Why was there no blood on it? Very good point.
And then they've now matched that, through family members. But what we're not hearing is cross, contamination from the scene itself, i.e. if he drops this and he's stabbing, there's blood going everywhere. And I would submit to you, if it ends up right next to that victim, there is blood on that sheet, but we're not hearing about that. So my thinking is, did this guy bring this post-homicide and place it there as part of a staging activity?
No, he didn't have time. He didn't have time to do that. Guys,
Nancy Grace is talking. She said he didn't have time.
I want to hear everything. Guys, this is how cases are fine-tuned. They're honed by... I remember
Very
talking to my...
Did he put it there before? I don't know.
In the DA's office about cases, talking to my investigator, working the evidence through, seeing what would work, what wouldn't. Like what You just heard McDonough say that would be a fantastic theory to put to a jury, but yet we know he was only in there for 20 minutes.
20 minutes or less. 404, rummaging around in the street. 420, seen on CCTV. Gas station. 16 minutes or less. The crime committed at 1122 King Road.
Dylan, DM, as she is called in the probable cause affidavit. How could it be? Everybody says that he walked right by her and didn't see her. I have a theory on that, Laura, and that theory is that she ducked back in her door and had the door cracked and saw him go by. Would that work with the evidence as we know it?
It could, certainly. And I mean, when you read the affidavit, it doesn't say she was standing in the doorway, in front of the kitchen. It doesn't give us that detail. It just says that she did open the door. And it's those three things, very distinct sounds and clues that we have from DM, Dylan, the roommate, that she heard who she thought was Kaylee saying, "There's someone here." Then she heard the whimpering and crying sounds and a male voice saying, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." And then that third and final time she opens the door, she sees the figure dressed in black with the mask and the bushy eyebrows, and then says she locks the door.
Let's chop that up briefly. Some people get irritated when you talk about DM, but the point is she's giving her commentary and they released it in the affidavit, so you can't get mad at anyone questioning what she said because it is what it is. This is her testimony. We have the right to question anything that's said in the affidavit and now this search warrant of his apartment. Was she in the doorway? Because I can't see somebody letting this person live standing in the doorway, standing where I could see you. Still strange information. Because now you have to question his mindset if we're to believe what she said. Mahmoud was up on the panel last night saying, could it be that it's backwards, her information? That she basically saw him when he first came in, which would mean she's lied. And she was up during the entire time while he is cutting up her friends. And instead of saying, yeah, I saw him when he first came in, he had bushy eyebrows. I heard the whole thing going on from floor to floor. Shut my door, played possum, and woke up the next day pretending to find the victims, would be to save face. Because she knew police would say, well, why you didn't call 911? You felt some type of way. You froze. Why would you freeze? This is why you know all this information is contradictory to some point. Because you can't have it both ways. You can't say, well, I froze, but then I went to sleep. A person would assume freezing means you felt some type of way when you saw the person. And if indeed this is a party house, was a party house, a lot of people came there. Allegations now of a party that went on what would have been Friday with a lot of guests there, 150. Then it shouldn't have been no big deal seeing somebody walk by with a mask on. But that's why I told you, I don't believe any of their associates wore a mask hanging around them. I doubt it. So could it be she did know what was going on in the house? She saw him when he first came in. But because she knew she didn't do anything, she just made up the version that she saw him at the end. And this will be cold-blooded to know their so-called friend heard and saw everything, but turned a blind eye and then pretended to find the victims later on that morning. See, we don't know because we weren't there. But it is strange. So now we have to ask ourselves, will data show that she texted the girls that morning to see if they were okay? Hey, I saw a strange guy walk by my room. Was this your friend, your company? Do you know this guy with bushy eyebrows and a mask? Because if we find out during the trial that DM never texted the girls, then something suspect with her behavior. Whether she knew Kohberger or not, conspired with him or not. How are you going to explain to somebody saying you didn't even text the girls just to ask, hey, who's this guy walking by? because the opening and closing of doors during the crime is peculiar. You can't judge somebody for questioning that, because that shows she was up. And at least 2 of the victims were up. So if I was inebriated or drunk, why would I be opening and closing doors? I don't know any drunk people that would just keep getting up to look out, investigate. Most people who are inebriated, they've been out partying all night, they go to bed. They may get something to eat, text somebody for a little while, but they're not going to be up windedly because they're tired. And this crime is alleging at least after 4 to 4:20, a very short window. She's opening and closing doors. So let's chop this up, because I haven't really thought about this. What are the odds she happens to see the perpetrator walk by round 3 of opening a door? Stay woke. What are the odds that on round 3 of opening a damn door of disturbances in this house, the perpetrator is walking towards her, but doesn't see her, doesn't accost her, doesn't kick in the door, doesn't slash her? I want you to think about that. What are the odds on round 3 of opening a door during disturbances, the perpetrator sees this blonde-haired girl and does absolutely nothing? That's strange to me. I'm sorry. That's just too strange for me.
One of the other things, I want to go back to the sheets just really quick, because you had said at the beginning of the show, we've wondered if Bryan Kohberger got involved with discussions online on Facebook groups and on Reddit and on all these things. But there was a very specific thing that somebody said that a lot of people are saying could probably be Bryan Kohberger. He wrote on a Facebook page that was titled University of Idaho Murders Facebook Discussion
Is
Group.
that when he was going under Papa Rogers or the other name?
Papa Rogers,
allegedly?
right.
Okay.
And this is before the probable cause affidavit. Mm-hmm. And he says one of the evidence released, the murder weapon has been consistent as a large fixed blade knife. This leads me to believe they found the sheath. We didn't know about the sheath at the time.
Yeah,
we did not know about it.
Yeah, but that's a leak from the investigation is where that's coming from. You can't believe that they knew that.
Unless that was him bragging online. And Dr. Bethany, in a nutshell, wouldn't that fit exactly with the personality characteristics that you observed?
Absolutely, Nancy. That would absolutely fit with his personality. He was inserting himself into everything, online forums, saving a life, creeping on women in bars. And, we were talking about what's along that route between his home and the victim's home. And what nobody mentioned was other victims, that maybe that was a very common route for him. And maybe there are other potential victims that were along that route. So that not only would he have been shedding clothing, evidence, but maybe he was stalking other people as well. I mean,
yes,
serial killers
exactly.
don't just stalk one person.
Exactly.
This is the first in an intended long line of serial killings, and so I think we have to add that into our discussion.
Just got a lot has been made of to whether a quadruple homicide can be effected in 16 minutes. I think it wasn't, Jackie, wasn't it 16 minutes? Laura, wasn't it 16 minutes we believe he was in the home? Yeah. Okay, what about it, Joe Scott?
Yeah, my thought is that the individual that perpetrated something like this would have to have a familiarity with the environment to move that quickly through this, because this is dirty, dirty work, and it is labor intensive. I hate to put it in those terms, but it truly is. The individual would have to move with stealth. They would have to move with purpose. They would have to know where the victims are in order to facilitate this, and they'd have to be prepared showing up. So, it's possible. 16 minutes, certainly. I know somebody certainly people in the military that are trained at this sort of thing could do it probably under that time. But, you're talking about college kids. You're not talking about enemy combatants here. And so, and if he had familiarity with this environment, I think that's possible.
Wherever today takes you.
Well, Was he familiar? Had he been in the house before? Some people assume that he has.
His hair follicles might be there already.
If he had been in the home before.
Well, my thought about this, Nancy, I'm wondering if he had not been going in there in that house when other people were not there and maybe nesting in that house. That's why I think that it's
scary.
really interesting if the cops went in there and looked in the closets to see if there was any touch DNA left behind, or if this guy had been having some kind of masturbatory fantasies in those closets, just hanging out when no one else
Why
is
is it when you say masturbatory fantasies, nobody says a word? When I say it, everybody goes, why would you say that? That's gross. Ugh. There's no evidence of that. But you and Bethany talk about it all the time. But when I say it, it's all like, oh no. Why did she say that? Okay.
Okay, the other possibility, Nancy, is that I like the use of Joe Scott Morgan's word nesting. I'd never heard that before, but maybe he was also nesting at night when the kids were sleeping. I mean, he did that work so quickly, 16 minutes. I'm not a crime scene investigator. I'm just like, how do you kill 4 people in 16 minutes?
Well, hold on. Chris McDonough has been at the scene. Chris, isn't it true that from the outside looking in, if you look in every window, you can easily spot the layout of the home?
Absolutely, Nancy. And we talked about this on your show many times, where this guy is such a mechanical existence, and he's taken all of this time to kind of, set the stage like Joe's talking about. And that's where that cinder block in the back window behind the house that we spoke about just doesn't look right. That was just out of place. And one other thing on the evidence that I don't think nobody's talking about yet is after the incident, if he's gone out and just moved the items in various different locations, that air filter in that car is going to be critical to take, because you're able to get pollens from the different type of environments, trap them in that air filter, and Joe talk about this for days, but then bring a botanist in and see if those environments are consistent with those pollens.
That is an incredible idea. Oh gosh, that's such a good idea.
They had an AACC guy come in and check the air conditioning system in the house.
They did? You know that?
I do.
You said they had a what kind of guy?
HVAC, an air conditioning.
HVAC.
Yeah, came into the
There's
house.
one more big piece of evidence that no one's really, diving into, and that's the shoe print.
Yep.
In the hallway that they recovered or noticed. They enhanced it with amido black, which is it's a protein. It reacts with the proteins in blood. So, and it's really clear in the affidavit if, in fact, the footprint was left in blood. But they do have this identified as coming from a van-style shoe, and it's a diamond pattern. It looks like it. I don't know if it's a heel strike or a toe strike, but if he's transferring blood off of the sole of that shoe and it's creating a print, that's very significant. And all of these items, we're talking about knives, we're talking about shoes, all these things, it doesn't take forensics to track this down. This is shoe leather on the part of the cops going out and just trying to determine, did he own these things? Is there a purchase history with these things? Vans are very specific. I know a lot of college kids have them. My college kids that I teach at Jacksonville State wear them. But, that's significant. Is it something that he owned? And the pattern on that shoe is distinctive to him depending upon the wear pattern.
As you can see, there is so much evidence to sift through. And so far, all we've seen is a probable cause affidavit. What will come next? We wait as the evidence.
Nancy Grace, everybody in company. Information has come about from the apartment. Unsealed information. I read all that information during a live stream last night. Shoe print at the door matches a diamond-shaped shoe found at his residence. How long has he had the shoe? Did he purchase the shoe just for this event? Why not wear some type of boot? As I told you, I won't doubt that the perpetrator kept the shoes. So now you have to ask what he did with the clothes. If they were dark, He would be stupid enough to put them in a washing machine. He kept the shoe. What's the difference? Dickies tag and receipt from Walmart. Pair of pants, I would assume. Those would have been bloodied. So we have to ask, were the Dickies black, blue, tan? Red stains will be very visible on a tan pair of Dickies. What all did he keep and what all did he throw away as far as clothing? What all did he wear? The nitrite gloves. I explained to you what type of gloves they were. They are disposable. Used for people who have vigorous type of work. Engineering, mechanics, tattoo artists, hairdressers. Not people who teach school and grade papers. So I assume he bought the gloves deliberately for this crime. What will his receipts show? Or what all he purchased recently before the murders? When did he decide to put this plan into motion? August, September, October, November. When did he actually touch down Washington soil? Did he move out there to be a serial killer? Yes, I won't doubt he did take something from the house. Why not? 20 minutes or less, he was in his house. He could have taken something. Who's to say he didn't? Nobody there to watch him. Same thing with opening and closing doors, breaking into doors. There's nobody there to stop him. So you can't say, oh, he wouldn't have kicked in the door. He wouldn't have pushed in the door. Well, you don't know that because, one, you don't know Kohberger, and who was going to stop him? He knew to go in. He assumed he was going to go in and come out, which he did. Foolishly, he went in and didn't plan the crime carefully, but he did go in and kill some kids and come out. So that plan was executed. It's the getting caught is what he wasn't planning on. Did he find these kids by happenstance? Notifications came up on his phone as suggestions. He went from there. Focused on 1, 2, whatever. Who was the actual target? Did the other kids get in the way by being up, walking around, talking? They crossed paths after he came down from killing the 2. I believe he killed the 2 on the 3rd floor first, Kaylee and Maddie. You also hear in his commentary that perhaps he planted the sheath. He's been in the house before. That would be even more scary to know he's been in and out of this house and these kids never noticed, paid attention to him. So that means he would have to been definitely watching this house to take a chance on walking in the house to hide, slumber, touch their belongings. God knows what else he was doing in there. Urinating, ejaculating, whatever. Just because he didn't penetrate them does not mean this was not a sexual crime. Who knows if he can actually perform, has ever had sex with a woman, man or woman, don't know. When did he touch down? How many times did he make it back and forth to Washington State before actually enrolling in class? All those things are relevant. Was it actually August or June he started messaging, watching the house? What is the actual month he started being in that vicinity? Weeks before the deaths, he messaged one of the girls. Who is the girl? Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, which one? And if we're to believe that Kaylee was not supposed to be there living, then one would say, why would he continue to watch the house if the target doesn't live there anymore? What sense would that make? To keep going to a house and you don't see the target. You don't see the target's car. Common sense will tell you he's Googled all the cars, all the girls. Found out they all lived there just from the photographs coming up on social media platforms. So he knew all of them lived there. So one would have to say, why did he kill all of them? And to deliberately go up to the top floor means you had to watch the house from some location. Behind the house, the street that runs up behind the house, binoculars, something to say, okay, she stays here, This one's in this room. You had to have watched and verified. So what was the verifying factor to know my target lives up on the 3rd floor? Stay woke. Evidence left behind. At the scene by Kohberger, what did he leave behind? What did he take from the scene? Hair fibers, dog fibers. You hear in this unsealed warrant, hair, possible dog hair, shoes confiscated with a diamond sole print, black nitrite glove. Where's the other one? Why is there only one? That's suspicious to me. Because these gloves come in a box. I read you that information last night. 100 in a pack. So why is there only one glove? Did he need that souvenir to gloat to himself? I'll keep one and I'll throw away the other one. So that would lead you to think he took something from the scene belonging to the victims. Piece of jewelry, hair, clothes, underwear. Will we find out that something personal was found in the apartment belonging to the victims, such as clothes, underwear, bra? Did he leave a calling card at the scene in their rooms? Something that only he would know. Wrote something on a wall or on the victim. Left it in the closet. See, you don't know. Because in less than 20 minutes, he had time to kill each person and do something in the rooms pertaining to the victims. Because you're not going to do all this planning, run up in the house, kill these kids without leaving a calling card. And also, he would take something out of there belonging to them. Why not? Did he move deliberately to Washington to kill? Period. Will we find out he was stalking these victims before moving to Washington State? That would be even more devastating. That he found these kids on social media, became immersed with them, and then decided to apply to school deliberately because of these kids and or to kill. My better half is telling me he moved to Washington State to murder. Be out of the way. Don't live around friends, family, associates. Do his thing. I'm going to become a killer. I'm going to apply to this school, and I'm going to move out to the Pacific Northwest to do what these other killers have done. A few serial killers have come out from the Pacific Northwest. BTK, Green River Killer, Ted Bundy. Was he trying to mimic any of these killers or all of them in some form of fashion? But he got caught. So the journey was short. Was he stalking anyone else? Pullman or Moscow? See, you hear that mentioned here. I've also mentioned that in my commentary. Don't think that they were the only ones. Because you hear them mention on his route, discarding things, because it took him too long to get home on the morning of November 13th. Who's to say he hadn't been watching someone on that route at a job, at a store? And obviously he can easily get fixated on someone. He's bought coffee at that little coffee place. You don't know. Will evidence in his apartment gather show he was stalking someone else, messaging someone else? Rebuffed as well. The fact that one of the targets did not respond, is that the reason why he decided to kill her and her friends? She won't respond. She's blocked me, deleted. But let's be truthful. If you're using a fake profile with a meme, why should I respond? Why should anybody respond? Private account, why would I respond? I don't know you. I don't see what you look like. So why would I respond? See, people don't think about things like that. But see, you're dealing with a diabolical mind, so he's not on the level that most people are on. I'm trying to say hello to her. She won't even say hi back. So did one of the girls block him? And as they said, if you don't have notifications on, you're not going to even see that the person messaged you. They're not your friend. They're not following you. So it goes into message requests. So possibly one of the girls didn't see the hello, how are you doing, blah, blah, blah. Oh, maybe she did and she ignored it. And or deleted it and blocked him. Now he's angry. Go put up another profile. Hey, why you block me? Why you delete me? What will all of the messaging say? But they said it's really nothing, just hello, she didn't respond. But if we're dealing with somebody who's vengeful, gets angry easily, offended easily, that's all it took. As I've told you, when you deal with situations of women being stalked, men being stalked, nothing you do will be good enough. Whether you respond, don't respond, nothing you do will be good enough. They are going to be angry anyway. How did it come to be this young man went down this road becoming a killer? Angry at his past, being teased as a child, overweight as a child, couldn't get a girlfriend, couldn't talk to people, didn't know how to talk to people, didn't know how to conversate, no real friends, no real friendship, no girlfriend, no courtship, never had children, never married. Just a walking, talking lump of clay. And decided, I'm sick of this. I need a victim. I need revenge on how the people have treated me, mistreated me, ignored me. I want revenge on everybody that made fun of me, teased me. Is it possible that these girls reminded him of the girls that teased them? Cheerleaders, we've heard someone from school say that. The girls look like them. But then when you think about it, what is that to say? They look like those girls from grade school. Sounds crazy. These kids are strangers just like those other kids. Strangers. So now I'm supposed to sit here and believe some blonde-haired girls teased him in grade school. So then he fixated on one of these blonde-haired girls and decided to kill her. It's ridiculous. But then I'm also not Bryan Kohberger. And I'm not in his mind or his head to know the exact reason why he, one, chose these kids. Traveled to the house 12 times. Broke into the house and murdered them. Went back home, discarded items, and returned hours later. You know. Who can explain that logically? No one. What else will we find out pertaining to November 13th? Was he the only suspect perpetrator of these crimes? I also brought a video. Did he have help? Because everybody's got their own theory of this nonsense that took place. And how is it that somebody could also be living in that house on the same floor as two dead people and not know something was wrong on that morning? That 911 should have been called. Because if we are to believe distorted sounds came from an audio camera next door, that somebody staying in the house that was up should have heard something to say, this don't sound good. This don't sound right. I don't know this guy that just walked by my door. Let me call these kids and see, do they know him? Did DM call Xana to ask, do you know this guy that just walked by my door? Did she call the other two roommates upstairs, text them, do you know this guy that just walked by my door? Or she just shut her door and went to sleep. And another question is, did she ever come out of that room and see that the people were dead and play possum? Did she confer with her friend down on the first floor while all this was going on? They both played possum. And did she and that girl go upstairs and see those kids dead and called other people there before calling 911? Because I think some people are questioning that as well. Because if you listen to the captain, he says the call came from inside of the house of someone being passed out. So that means somebody else called of someone being passed out. And where this is fuzzy to me is the description. Wouldn't you say, hey, I'm at a house where some dead people were found and the person passed out and can't talk, so I'm calling on her behalf. And the other one is too erratic. She can't speak either. Stay woke now. Because that's very pivotal to this investigation. If we're to believe the call came from the inside, it is now being relayed, and it was rumored even months ago, that the girls found Ethan or whomever dead. So if indeed somebody called from on the inside of the house, then that means they called somebody before calling 911, and that's suspect to me. Because my assumption is that the girls found someone dead, called 911, and then ran out of the house. And I think most people, after seeing someone bludgeoned to death, would run out first, then call 911. So what is the truth? Did Bryan Kohberger move to Washington to deliberately kill? His choice of a killing field. Out of the way. Nobody can see me. Nobody can watch me. And did he become enraged when the target did not respond through social media? If you'd like to donate to this great network, $sign Big Angie, 129 Cash App. When I get more information, I will bring you an update pertaining to this diabolical story out of Idaho. It would be nice if he would just fold and plead guilty so the family can move on, grieve. Taxpayers won't have to spend their hard-earned money on a trial. But if he's indeed a narcissist, psychopath, then he's got to gloat and get some enjoyment out of this. So going to trial would be beneficial to him. To see the crime scene photos, hear people testify against him, listen at people cry and moan, listen at testimony from detectives, FBI agents, eyewitness testimony, evidentiary material. He would get a jolt out of all of that. Sickly and sadly, he would. In the end, we will never be able to understand why he killed these kids. But as I've said before, if a person can kill their own child, kill their own family member, relative, wife, spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend, why would you be shocked that a random stranger would kill another stranger? Because random strangers do kill other random strangers for whatever reason. And you can't understand it because you don't have a diabolical mind, a deviant mind. And I do believe, had he not been caught, he would have killed someone else, plural. And who's to say that he wasn't planning to kill someone else? Did he have a manifesto, a kill list? Will we find out there were more targets in Idaho, Washington, or any other neighboring state? Thank you for joining me. You have been listening to The Vault.